Hey guys, so this week's technique of the week on my Instagram account was sagittal plane movement. So just forward and backward through lunges and then into a hamstring stretch. Just kind of designed to warm through the legs, both in strengthening through the quads and stretching through the hamstrings, and then mobilizing the pelvis in that forward and backward motion. So driving forward and driving back. And the topic that I kind of want to talk about today, well, this week in general, is the gray area in practice in our lives. I think it stems out to our whole lives, but mostly in our practice. And I like to use those lunges as the asana part or asana definition of gray area. We have fully in the lunge, and then we have fully out of the lunge and in the hamstring stretch. Fully in the hamstring stretch or fully out of the hamstring stretch and into the lunge. So two opposite ends of the spectrum. And you're on a spectrum with that, right? Like it's very linear. One line forward and back. Now, people tend to go to the extreme where they're all the way here or they're all the way here. And they think that if they're not on one severe end of the spectrum, then they're not doing the work. But there's all this gray area in between the beginning and the end, or the end and the beginning. That's for exploration. And in all of that space, in all of that movement, we can really start to understand and be able to define to ourselves what our habits are. You might be halfway through that movement and the front knee begins to cave in, or the hip begins to drop or twist, or the shoulder releases. And it's only when you're moving very slowly forward and back like that and being explorative and linking it to the breath that you can start to understand that there's more information in the in-between than there is in the end result or the beginning result, however you look at it. So using your yoga practice in general to start to understand your body, because that's what it's all about, right? Like we want good mobility, we want good strength, we want good control over our body, but we can't have any of those properly until we actually understand how our body operates and functions in movement, not just in form. So being in the lunge, we'll have things that show up as well. Our knee can go in or it can drop out, our hip can release, our glute cannot fire. There are various things that can happen there, and there's information in those. But we never want to forget about the information that's in between, that happens when we go into that position, because it's how we enter into that position that will be indicative of how that position goes. And if we enter into any position, any asana, mindlessly, then we're going to be missing the important aspects of the things that we need to focus on and work on. Our body by nature will do habitual things or create habits that make its job easier, especially when we're talking about strength and conditioning and movement and mobility. So when the knee drops in, it's just because one part of the body doesn't want to work hard enough. If you're not exploring your body in such a way where you're really observant of how you move into and out of things, then you're just missing the point, and not in a like, oh, you're a piece of shit missing the point way, but in a way that you could be accessing so much more. And if you train, if you do martial arts, if you do CrossFit, whatever, if you're athletic, you're not going to train your body, you're not going to train techniques incorrectly for long periods of time. Why? Because that's going to weaken you. You know this. You wouldn't go into CrossFit and do shit wrong. You wouldn't go into jiu-jitsu and learn the technique wrong and half-ass the technique. I mean, some people do, but whatever. Like, if you want to be good, if you want to be effective at your body, you have to master the technique first. So when you do this forward and back movement, I want you to go as slow as you possibly can. Really drag it out. Count the length of the breath. That way you're forcing a pace to the movement as well. Start to pay attention to how the hips feel in space, how the knee moves in space, the pressure of the foot against the ground, how the shoulders start to move. And these are details that will unfold over time. Years down the line, you'll notice something that you didn't notice today or tomorrow or the next day. Your body's going to unfold as it will. But be really conscious and aware, and then you are better in control of that unfolding process than if you're just like, oh, look, I did the lunge. Oh, look, I did the hamstring stretch. Whee! There's a lot of information in between. Don't half-ass your practice because it's not going to be worth it. I'll see you guys next week.